Good evening. This is Goldie, also known as the Talking Head in one of the secure locations. Excuse me. It's Wednesday, November 3rd, 2010. Remember, most importantly, I rant so you don't have to. I feel that this rant is my duty to myself, and specifically my duty to my friends that have children. Tonight's going to be a little more convoluted than usual, as though that can happen, as there are just too many topics and too much post-election energy. I want to welcome any new viewers, including the smart, sexy pirate from the West Coast. Separately, please go see Eric Telford tomorrow night in Austin at the Elephant Room. He and his boys kick ass. That'll be a jazz show, jazz funk. The $90 million bond package that I talked about last week that would not raise taxes was passed yesterday by the city of Austin. It was the mayor, Lee Leffingwell, that stated the taxes would not go up so that we could expand the sidewalks on 3rd Street to allow al fresco dining and $7 million for the boardwalk over Town Lake. A friend of mine called me up and said that I should have just told people to vote no, which, by the way, I did. However, as you will hear later tonight, I am done talking to the idiots. This rant is for intelligent elitists only. We don't have enough time left in life to try and convince the idiots of our deeply thought out points of view. There are salesmen for that. I'm trying to figure out how to keep bond packages like this from happening. Not specifically this bond package, but all bond packages, as these elected officials dole out our tax dollars like drunken sailors. Excuse me. Wednesday, November 3rd, 2010. Massive amounts of money came pouring into Tea Party, also known as Republican, candidates, and they took the House of Representatives. It reminds me of clean coal or green marketed corporations. Everyone was a Tea Partier yesterday. As Garrett Hardin puts it, after we give food to 1 million starving people without any check on their population, in other words, when next year there are 1,100,000 starving people, we have to ask, now what? Well, let me tell you, now what? Sarah Palin and her sponsor, Fox News, will latch onto this Tea Party fever. All other Republicans will latch onto this Tea Party fever. And you'll get a Republican president, a Republican Senate, and a Republican House come 2012. Do you think they are going to follow Tea Party principles? Listen up, Tea Partiers. I will predict now that you should have done what I told you to do, and that was vote for Democrats. Then the day of reckoning would have come much sooner. You are not going to dismantle Obamacare. You are going to get a $700 billion increase in the deficit by extending the Bush tax cuts for the very wealthy. The rich will not spend the money. They already spend as much as they want. They will put the money overseas. You will not get smaller government. You will get more corporate welfare. You will not get any changes to the structural defects. I told you so. Liz Cheney was on Fox News on Election Day. Quotes, "This is only half the battle. The president really is the commander-in-chief. We need to fix that as well." Then she talks about conservative, fiscally responsible policies. She agrees with Admiral Mullins that the debt is a national security issue. Just like this guy in Dallas who I watched the Yemen bomb plot with. He commented that it was suspicious this close to the election. I asked him where was he during the time just prior to the 2004 election, and all I got was crickets. We talked some more. I told him I did a weekly rant on deep structural political issues. He asked me where was I on the political spectrum. I said, I am not on the spectrum. I asked him where was he. He replied that he is a constitutional conservative. Jesus, what does that mean? I asked him about the big three: abortion, capital punishment, and Iraqi babies. He is against abortion, he is for capital punishment, and he was silent on Iraqi babies. I specifically asked this question for a few reasons. One, it determines consistency as to the person I'm talking to. Two, if they are a Tea Partier, It gets to the heart of a lot of the inconsistencies that you see in an overarching platform search that is going on in the Tea Party right now. And 3, it actually puts them on the defensive and gets their brain rolling so that maybe we can look at some shared goals. This is probably backwards the way I do this, considering as a politician, you want them to like you first. Then you talk about the issues. I don't care if they like me, okay? As to Goldy, he does not have enough time left in his life to make friends with this guy. I tried to tell him about the structural regulatory defect of corporations and unions buying our legislators. He would have none of that. The problem is that we're not on the gold standard. Oh well. I was at a Halloween party, and there was a Tea Party guy there. I was wearing a Glenn Beck mask, by the way. His buddy was dressed up as a funny terrorist. I kept asking the terrorist, "Why do you hate our freedom?" Anyway, the Tea Party guy and I started speaking. We only got to the point of him telling me that he is a fiscal conservative and hates the corrupt spending. I tried to get to some deeper definitions of conservative, and I got crickets. I tried to tell him about the structural regulatory defect of corporations and unions buying our legislators. He would have none of that. The problem is that his candidates are not serving yet. Oh well. Hey, Tea Partiers, you should feel exactly as I felt the day after Obama's election, depressed. I thought we were going to get more of the same. That was my depression about Obama. And we actually got much more of the same, and worse of the same. Privacy, wars, spending, giveaways. Tea Partiers, you got used. They took you and your energy and focused it on electing Republicans, not Tea Partiers. It's painful to watch, and please don't give up the ship. I will still work on some issues that we all agree must be fixed. Democrats, you should feel bad that Republicans took over, but for the wrong reasons. In the old days, I hated it when Republicans made gains, but this time I'm depressed because we needed it to be much worse. We needed the political BP oil gusher to continue spewing, but it didn't. Oh well. I will still keep working, but watch the Republican Party shout that they have gone to the right to co-opt the Tea Party, and watch Sarah Palin do the same. In fact, she will be the loudest shouter of no compromise, and then watch the silence that accompanies all points of compromise that actually do occur over the next 2 years. Early on Tuesday, November 2nd, 2010, I'm typing this with Fox News on. Sarah Palin will be on the show later. This is just me predicting. Watch her ride the wave of Tea Party victories. One or more is all that matters. Most hopefully for them, Rand Paul in Kentucky. He's a pretty boy, has a good name, and is relatively intelligent. As to some of the things he has said, irrelevant. Okay, 5 o'clock on Fox. Sarah Palin has a new, darker hair color. It makes her look more intelligent. Later on, she appears with Geraldine Ferraro, lending her credibility, and to be honest, she looked good and sounded good. Be afraid. And you Tea Partiers, be enraged. She has no right to your agenda. She is not a Tea Partier. Jim DeMint says that finally the people have taken back the government from entrenched politicians, of which he is one. Running as an outsider from the inside. God bless these guys. You gotta love them. All right, getting back to Liz Cheney on Fox News. She was talking about the failure of Obama as to the failure of national security in regards to the debt. She said, we can't forget Iraq, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and I say Yemen, which is the 4th undeclared war. We are killing people in these 4 countries, and we ask, why do they hate our freedom? There's an editorial from the Baltimore Sun, October 28, 2010, Learning from WikiLeaks. In this editorial, it details brief sketches of what is in the 400,000 documents and comments on the WikiLeaks founder, what is in the 400,000 documents, and comments on the WikiLeaks founder, Julian Assange's potential delusions of grandeur, of which delusions I care not an iota. Here's a telling quote. Yet, however flawed the messenger may be, Americans ignore the message in these documents at their peril. U.S. military advisors who tolerated the torture and killing of innocent civilians in the name of quickly turning over responsibility for security to Iraqi forces did the country they were trying to help no favors. Indeed, they probably damaged the overall U.S. mission there by inadvertently creating a whole new constellation of grievances for al-Qaeda and its allies to exploit. Close quotes. This is important. Julian Assange is risking his life and the lives of everyone that works for him. Julian Assange was on Judge Napolitano's Freedom Watch on the Fox Business Network this past weekend. He talked about some important things contained in the documents. He highlighted an order called FRAGO, F-R-A-G-O 242. FRAGO 242 is an American military order to the troops in Iraq that if American troops witness torture or crimes by Iraqi military personnel, they are to ignore such crimes and not to interfere. Why do you hate our freedom? Think about the license that this order grants to the local military forces. Think about that. Total power to rape, steal, torture, and kill. It's obvious we should continue in these costly overseas corporate welfare giveaways to our military subcontractors. They seem to be having such a positive effect. The full interview, by the way, is at foxbusiness.com/freedomwatch. I would watch it. It's horrific. In today's Austin American Statesman, more on our fourth undeclared war. Quotes, Yemen charges Al-Awlaki, starts hunt for bomb maker. In this story, more justifications pour out for more U.S. intervention. Quotes, it was natural for the Yemen government to accuse Al-Awlaki, said Ali Jemi, an expert on al-Qaeda. They had been hunting him without charges. Now they have legal justification, and it will allow the Yemen and U.S. governments to better cooperate on his capture. But Yemen has said that Al-Awlaki is a Yemeni citizen and won't be handed over to the U.S. The Obama administration wants to try Al-Awlaki, who was born in New Mexico of Yemeni parents, but also reportedly has put him on a CIA assassination list. So there must be a FRAGO 242 order that goes both ways. In other words, if Yemeni armed forces torture a suspect, do you think the U.S. will turn them in for abuse? If the U.S. assassinates Al-Awlaki, do you think any heads will roll for the breach of Yemeni law? I think we know the answer. From an editorial today in the Washington Post, talking about the threat to cargo coming into the U.S. In the editorial, they were talking about closing the cargo loophole and that it is being worked on. Let me give you the quote that shows the cards of this fourth undeclared war. Quotes, even then, however, the best defense against terrorist attacks will remain good intelligence and preventive action, and not focused only on attacks already underway. More must be done to go after al-Qaeda's organization in Yemen. The U.S. is spending about $150 million to aid and train Yemeni forces and has dispatched special forces and drones to help in raids against al-Qaeda targets. But the effort is small compared to the offensive against al-Qaeda targets in Pakistan. And not enough is being done to help Yemen's government extend its authority to areas where al-Qaeda is based. Close quotes. My God, why don't we build democracies in every country in the world so that when ours falls due to our economic collapse, there will at least be places where democracy still exists. Tea Partiers, are you okay with this spending? You have to answer this question. Yes? Then you are a shareholding Republican or Democrat. Why do they hate our freedom? Interestingly, on Fox News on Tuesday, Election Day, there's no mention of dollars spent and by whom on these elections. Wouldn't this be the time for really hammering home the influence of the structural regulatory defect of corporations and unions buying our legislators? I'll bet you don't hear about it that much over on MSNBC either. By the way, any of y'all that watched MSNBC on election night, let me know if you did. I'd appreciate it. Separately, I realized that if we go down the road of restricting all groups spending on elections, like my constitutional amendment calls for, we have the problem of issue ads. How do we restrict those? Well, I guess the solution would be that 90 days prior to an election, no issue ads. And any ads at all can only be the campaigns themselves that have only received $100 contributions from individuals only. I guess they can choose to buy ads or hire consultants. The networks will not go for this part of my constitutional amendment. Obviously, they make tons of money off of these election ads. And I continue to think deeply on this critical issue, and I want to see your comments on it, but how do we handle those issue ads? Do we just restrict them? I think that's what we have to do. Okay. I see that our Commons, which, by the way, I was watching Free Speech TV yesterday, and Tom Hartman is on there, the Tom Hartman Show, and he was talking about the role of government is to protect the commons. So he is a far left progressive, and interestingly, that word commons comes out of a libertarian viewpoint. So I do recommend watching some of his shows. Although he is pro-Democrat, he does speak of libertarian issues. In any event, I see that our commons, in the form of taxpayer money, continues to be spent by the drunken sailors. In an article dated October 28, 2010, high-speed rail grant awarded. A $5.6 million grant has been awarded by the U.S. Department of Transportation to plan a passenger rail line, get this, from Oklahoma City to the Rio Grande. The Rio Grande is a river that separates the United States, or Texas, which is in the United States, and Mexico. Okay, they're going to spend $5.6 million grant has been awarded to plan a passenger rail line from Oklahoma City to the Rio Grande. Reading on. The money is part of a $2.4 billion, it's $2.4 billion in federal grants to be unveiled today for high-speed rail projects, spokesman for the Federal Railroad Administration said. The $5.6 million grant announced Wednesday by the office of U.S. Representative Lloyd Doggett, Democrat Austin, he won, by the way, would pay for what is expected to be a 42-month study that would identify a preferred route on existing or new tracts, estimate capital and annual operating costs, project ridership, and evaluate environmental effects of passenger rail. At the end of the article, from passenger rail advocate Peter Lakoti, quotes, high-speed rail, you're talking gazillions of dollars. I don't know where we're going to get that, close quotes. Who the freak wants to go from Oklahoma City to the Rio Grande? And actually, I don't even want an answer to that question. I don't want you to even try answering that question. Do not answer that question. If this is stimulus money, why aren't we fixing roads, or fixing tracks, or fixing bridges, or fixing schools, or fixing VA hospitals, or fixing water treatment plants, or sewage treatment plants, or inspecting coal plants, or inspecting nuclear plants? All right, I'm going to go through some emails, and this will be the slightly convoluted part. There's been a bunch of emails I've received over time, and kind of want to just go through them, and I'll try and revert back to the comment that they're talking about. Goldy, I agree with your basic idea of challenging the normal way of looking at a problem. About the separation of church and state, I think Christine O'Donnell is getting a bad rap. It is standard conservative fare to say that these words, this phrase, is not in the Constitution. And they are right. These words are not there. The words in the Constitution are that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It was the Supreme Court that created the separation of church and state, and that was the point she was trying to make. No, it really wasn't, I think, he says. Historically, it appears the founders and authors of the Constitution did not mean to remove all religion from government, considering the way they did things. A reasonable argument could be made that the separation of church and state as currently applied is in violation of the Free Exercise Clause. The federal government is telling people they are not free to exercise their religion. That's T. I think we ended up here because as society became more diverse and tolerant, the dominant culture could no longer assume that it could dominate, and people were faced with the possibility of allowing anyone to do anything religious in schools and other public places. And no one wanted to go there. Who decides what is religious and therefore protected? It has seemed better to say nobody can do anything. By the way, when did you start saying God bless? What does that mean to you? Just curious. Seattle. Buddy. The founders were fleeing religious oppression and the connection between church and state. I was saying God bless before Glenn Beck was. I received an email from a friend forwarding an email from the Democrats. This is right before the election. Don't let Republicans take back the Senate. In this charged election year, Republicans think they can take back the Senate and put President Obama's agenda permanently on hold. And they're right. If Democrats don't step up now in a big way, we risk letting the Republicans seize control come November. But that's where you come in. By working together, we can defend the president's agenda for change and keep our country moving forward. Republicans will stop at nothing to derail our progress, and Senate Democrats need your help over the coming months to fight back. Sign up now and learn how you can help the DSCC fight back against right-wing Republicans. Well, the president's agenda for change, as I've said, was absolutely more of the same. People are worried about the big spending. I really won't go into it. We certainly would have had higher unemployment had the stimulus package not been there, although I brought up Neil Cavuto's survey that said that the new proposed $50 billion stimulus would produce not a single job. Shows the power of propaganda. So in any event, I didn't send any money to the Democrats. Here's another email from a friend. Goldy. Does your dad follow your rants? How about this? We should have medical death panels. Now, when I talked about health care, I didn't really go into Obamacare. I did talk about pre-existing conditions and how more likely than not, if you never had a pre-existing condition or had been denied coverage, you were for your current health care plan and you didn't want any changes to it. If you had been denied coverage or had a pre-existing condition and you reached the limits of your coverage, you were probably for it. In any event, I never really got into the death panels, and I really never got into that end-of-life type of stuff. But in any event, getting back to his thing, I was reading a Playboy forum. You should send your stuff to the editor, Guy Peterson, from April 2000 by a Ted C. Fishman, called Immodest Proposal. It started off with the question, can I live to be 125? And quoted Scientific American about how, as medicine evolves, people will be able to regenerate just about any body part that fails, including the head. Which, I won't even go into it. Some of his stats. The average lifespan in 1900 was 47. In 1998, it was 76. The population over 85 is growing faster than any other age segment. Estimated that by the year 2040, there may be at least 16 million people over that age of 85. Between 2010 and 2030, the size of the 65-plus population, baby boomers beginning to rot, will grow by more than 75%, while the size of the population paying taxes will rise less than 5%. And he says, not sure about that one myself. 80% of the population over the age of 65 suffers from a chronic disease. 80%. Two-thirds of those over 85 are too sick to really get along, and more than half suffer from some form of dementia. That's killer stats. The old, for as long as they can, will live and require care. The young will simply demand that someone else provide it. Premise: nothing is more expensive than old age, and the elderly are the least able to afford it. There are other stats, but really, I recall an economics class about this very subject. The prof was a Phil Porter, I believe of MIT, who noted that it was our duty to the U.S. to die, and quickly. There were stats that said something like 40% of your lifetime medical care costs happen in like the last month of your life, when people are spending whatever it takes just to stay alive another day. I think about my dad. This is my friend writing. In November of 2008, he had a small procedure, like $10,000, at a shitty little Florida hospital that actually was the cause of his eventual death. 2 months later, the family begged him to check into the far better and far more expensive Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville to get help. He was there for about 2 weeks before he died. The bill, I believe with care, stay, doctors, etc., it was something like $200,000. I'm certain that his wife didn't pay it because she would have had to sell their home to do it, which she didn't do. So who did pay for it? Medicare. Or did the hospital write it off? Who knows? But the invoice was there. So if it's about having things we really cannot afford, the upshot is this. When you hit 70 and you go to the doctor and he finds that you have a hole in your heart or a kidney issue or well on your way to Alzheimer's, the doctor should say, can you please step into this? I can't do it. The doctor should say, can you please step into this vestibule? And there they should shoot you in the head twice and then cremate you and deliver you home in a Ziploc. I think you're getting to me. Well, what I did talk about in healthcare was that we're going to end up with two separate systems. We're going to have a system of government run where you're going to have weights and rationing, which we have now. We have rationing now. And there will be the cash system where you'll be able to pay whatever it takes in order to get your lung transplant. And you'll get 5-year-old chemo under the government-run healthcare system, and you'll get new chemo under the cash system. And I said that your duty was to get in shape and quit smoking cigarettes. Those are the two things that you can do. Okay. Here's another email. Just got a chance to get on your rant. Great message, very clear. Best one yet. Good message on the ticket amnesty. This was on the state of Texas granting an amnesty to all of these tickets that they had issued. It was like $1.2 billion, and they were planning on taking in $17 million on this ticket amnesty. Why do they keep trying to pass new laws to deal with stuff that is already illegal and we already have penalties for? You're right on about ACC, that was Austin Community College. What a scam public education has become. It's like most stuff. Starts out as a good idea with good intentions and then becomes a money grab. That editorial should have had a disclaimer at the top stating that it was a paid advertisement. Thanks for your service. My take on the ACC was that they admitted that only 25% of the people that go to Austin Community College, which has a taxing district, only 25% graduated. And that it helped people that couldn't afford to go to college go. And that you could go ahead and take a class that you might want to take. And that it was an economic engine. And I asked, if it's an economic engine, why do you need taxpayer funds for it? And I said, if you want to take a class, go down to the library, pick up a classic, read it. When you come to words you don't understand, pick up a dictionary, learn those words, and you've now taken a class. That part, by the way, did pass several of the counties that are now added to the Austin Community College jurisdiction, taxing jurisdiction. Okay, here's another email from the same guy. Campaign contributions, seeking public funds. Ariana Huffington. They want the public funds because it will eventually mean unlimited resources. Remember our discussion. The media guys rake it in during the campaigns. I agree, 95% of current congressmen don't know the Constitution, and it wouldn't matter if they did. I do think it's odd that most of them are lawyers and swear an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. Hard to believe they would sign a contract without reading it. Amen. We will never get them to stop spending. We have to figure out how to defund them. How do we do that when they print money without asking us for permission? Okay, let's go through a couple of these things. On the campaign contributions, I've said we need to overturn Citizens United in a constitutional amendment, and that we need individuals to only be limited, only individuals, $100 maximum to any political campaign. No revolving door for regulators. And at all. You can't come from government and go get a job. When I was watching Colbert and Ariana Huffington was on, she was talking about that she wanted public funding of campaigns. And I opined that I am not for that. I don't think we need the public funding for it. Again, why are you doling out our money for it? Just restrict the number that they can get. They have to go shake hands with people and get their $100. And they can do with it what they want. Now, the second part, when he said 95% of current congressmen don't know the Constitution, this is when I was opining that Christine O'Donnell did not know what was in the First Amendment. And I said it actually doesn't matter. Because even these lawyers that say that they do know what's in the Constitution are saying that the mosque shouldn't be built near ground zero. So, to me, it's even worse when you pretend to say that you know what's in the Constitution and then do something that's diametrically opposed to it, or unconstitutional. The last thing that he talks about, we will never get them to stop spending. That's kind of the Neil Cavuto amendment that he wants to have, where no more pork. And then I said, well, we can dismiss that proposal. How do you determine what is pork and what isn't? You can't. And he says we have to figure out how to defund them. Yes. Okay? Thank God that Rick Perry got into office and wants to be president. He will not allow a state income tax to pass. Because if you were to, in any of these states where they have passed a state income tax, it has been for the point of saying, now we won't need to use property taxes, or now we won't need to use sales taxes in order to fund our state. Once you give them a new income stream, it never goes away. And I don't know what happened in Washington State on their income tax. A lot of rich people were for that one, but I had said that I was opposed to it. No more income streams. Stop all income streams. All right. Here's another email from a first-time emailer. I actually read the whole transcript because, as you know, I put these transcripts on the email alerts from the prior week so you can read it rather than having to see me in my face and listen to my voice. Good for you, although, of course, I don't agree with everything. I haven't read your suggestions for constitutional amendments, so you may have opined on this already. But I have a theory that a few of these changes in our political system would be immensely popular across most political persuasions. And he comes up with a whole little list here. And they're going to sound familiar to you. Prohibit corporations, unions, PACs, advocacy groups, essentially any entity that is not an individual living citizen, from donating to or spending money to promote any candidates, political parties, or ballot initiatives. Amen, brother. Thank God. God bless. Number 2, prohibit lobbying by organizations or companies that are doing business or bidding for business with the government. This one is going to be a little bit harder. I understand the point. And my point of regulators and legislators not being allowed to go into those companies keeps those companies or organizations from having any sway whatsoever over the people that they are lobbying. Because it's hard to distinguish who should be allowed to lobby and who should not be allowed to lobby. I just don't want the people that are lobbying to have any power of giving money to those political campaigns or granting a job when these people get out. Wink, wink, nod, nod. We'll give you a job here at Exxon when you get out of the EPA. So give us this drilling lease in the Gulf of Mexico. So I'm a little tougher about his number 2, but I like it. It's a good idea. It allows us to look at the issue. Number 3, eliminate the role that political parties play in our election process, i.e., people can still associate with political organizations, but candidates no longer run with a party designation. Party primaries are no longer important steps in the election process. You know what? It's a good point. I don't know how to do that. It's a good point. It's a good point. I'm not going to throw this out. Number 4, make Election Day a mandatory holiday and make registering to vote a requirement for all citizens. Why not? What does that harm? Why is it not a mandatory holiday? And do it on a Monday, not a Tuesday. Okay? That way you don't lose that Monday. All right? So for businesses, let's make it a Monday. The first Monday in November. And you're going to hear Republicans howl about that. And that's who usually howls about those two things. And I ask why. I know the answer. Okay, number 5, create term limits for all elected officials. We totally agree. Number 6, eliminate the filibuster and the 60-vote requirement to end debate in the Senate. Maybe. Okay? I don't see it as that big of a problem. I don't mind gridlock so much. As long as there's not undue influence by corporations, unions, and groups because of their political spending. And people being able to go work for those people that are lobbying. I think we would have less problems and we wouldn't worry so much about the filibuster because they would just be blowing hot air. It's not like they're beholden to anybody when they don't take any money from Exxon or BP. All right, number 7, eliminate the Electoral College and elect the president by popular vote. I totally agree. Everybody has a TV. It's not like the old days. Number 8, create independent, nonpartisan bodies to draw congressional boundaries so that districts are based on common geography and common interests, not political calculation. If you solve the problem of politicians being beholden to their donors, we will have less incentive. And if you have term limits, so that you don't get these permanent, entrenched incumbents based on these gerrymandered redistricts. My God, Texas in 2003, 2005. And I just can't even imagine what's going to happen this time here in Texas. It's just going to be ugly. But, by the way, okay, so that was his number 8. And that's, again, I think if we solve my problem, a lot of these problems become less cumbersome. They become less of a problem. By the way, last night on Fox, Rick Santorum, formerly a senator from Pennsylvania, kicked out in 2008, he was absolutely gleeful that so many state legislatures and governors went Republican, so that redistricting lines can be drawn by them, further solidifying the Republican incumbent's stranglehold on our commons. Dick Morris was on O'Reilly tonight, and he was saying the same thing. It's great. It's so great. We're going to be here for redistricting. We're going to be able to keep the incumbents in there. Does anybody who watches this stuff understand what they are watching? And I mean you Republicans that watch Fox. And I actually mean you Tea Partiers that call yourselves non-Republicans that watch Fox. Are you not disgusted? How can you not be disgusted with this? It's disgusting. It needs to be fixed. And I have a way to fix it. Constitutional amendments. MoveOn.org. Overturn Citizen United. My God. Nobody talks about the solutions. Let's put Republicans in there? You think that's a solution? All right. Here's another email. Hey, Goldie. Finally caught up with last Wednesday's rant. It was a good one. Seems like you found a good mix of reading news items and tying them together with your larger themes. Most of all, I appreciate hearing articulate, reasoned arguments about how to solve problems. You're part of what might actually be a return to sanity. We can only hope. I fumed over the chips and school children issue. This is where there were 2 school districts in Houston that were now putting chips in the ID cards of the kids down there. Going back to I hadn't been aware of it, and I almost wish my own kids were still in school so I could go fight it. But as it is, my self-interest is limited to the larger slippery slope of privacy erosion and the growth of Big Brother. Or as I've said, the growth of Big Stupid Brother. I've long argued we need a student's bill of rights to put reasonable limits on the random locker searches, drug testing, surveillance cameras, etc. Above all, to teach children they do have rights, and restricted government is good government. Our ballot in November includes a vote on Houston's red light cameras. While I'm opposed to the intrusion of cameras everywhere, at the same time, I like this better than having an armed officer conduct an arrest. You taught me years ago, every stop is an arrest in order to levy a fine. I also like the fact that the cameras provide factual evidence of the crime instead of relying on a police officer's testimony. So I'm really torn. I'd be interested to hear your take on this in some future rant. Okay. Well, here's the future rant. I am willing to sacrifice a lot to not have these types of erosions of privacy. I really am. I don't want to sacrifice our country to racial profiling in order to determine who's a citizen. I don't want cameras everywhere to maybe stop something. Wouldn't have stopped those UPS packages coming in from Yemen. I understand we worry about the safety of the kids, but knowing where they are at all times, once that chip goes in them, then we're okay with it. It's a slippery slope. Lock the doors when they get in there. Don't let anybody out. How hard is that? And I like his point about to teach children they do have rights, and restricted government is good government. That's the key here. The idea that they don't have the rights to determine whether or not they're being surveilled should be talked about in their social studies, or as I've put it, modern American history working backwards from today class that everybody should take. The red light cameras. There are statistics that the red light cameras that actually give your car the ticket, okay, so it's not a criminal offense, it's a civil offense, actually does stop red light runners, or slow down, not slow down, but they have less red light runners at those intersections. The cameras provide the factual evidence of the crime. This has been a tough one. I just don't like cameras of any kind anywhere, so I don't know what to tell you here. Am I willing to sacrifice the loss of some lives at these red lights in order to not have cameras there? Well, since the cameras are pushed by the vendors onto the police departments, and they promise those police departments that you'll get a job with us if you can get the city council members to buy these cameras, yes, I am opposed to them, because I know the system that gets those cameras up there. I know the system that gets these other cameras on these red lights. I have no idea what these cameras do. They certainly don't help traffic. If you've ever been stopped at a light where there's nobody at the crossing, and yet my light turned red, and there's a camera there. So they're not even using it for the purpose that they said they were when they purchased it using our taxpayer funds, our commons. So there, buddy, there's my take on it. No cameras. Okay, back to his email. Now, a quibble. I feel that you were slightly inconsistent in your rant about cannabis legalization. Insofar as you say you support an end to the drug war and its outrageous costs, but yet you use the message words of the pro-drug war advocates. I'm referring to the slang term marijuana, which has its origins, like the drug war itself, in xenophobic, racist policies designed to provide a legal avenue for oppressing certain minority groups. I've ranted on this to you before, but I remind you here since you've brought the issue into your rants. When the opposition frames the terms of the debate, they've basically already won. Hasta luego. You know, I disagree with my buddy on this one. I use the phrase weed, marijuana, drug, and I understand that if we are trying to appeal to the stupid, uneducated idiots, ignorant people, and if that's what this rant was about, and if I were on TV trying to run for office, then yeah, I would use the word cannabis, although people wouldn't even know what that means. Then that would be okay. But here, I am trying to get to the heart of the problem. When we go to the leaders and the salesmen and the politicians with what we have as a solution to certain problems, because that's all we're going to get out of this rant, me and you. We're going to come up with certain issue solutions. We're going to ignore the signs at all those Tea Party rallies that this is a Christian nation. I'm going to ignore them. Otherwise, I wouldn't talk to those people. I'm going to ignore that they are completely anti-abortion, because I wouldn't talk to those people. I'm going to ignore that they are for the death penalty, because I wouldn't talk to those people. And I'm going to ignore that they are for the 4 undeclared wars that we have. Undeclared because then we would have to grant Geneva Convention rights to the people that we arrest. So when I use this term weed or marijuana or cannabis, I mean, cannabis sounds like an antique term, makes me feel old. I don't even like using it. I know I'm using their message word. When you hear me say Obamacare, I'm doing it on purpose. I'm putting it in quotation marks. I don't use the TB word. I put it in quotation marks as a slur, like the N word. I won't use that one because it insults them. But seriously, buddy, I don't think this word, me using this word, insults you or harms our argument here in this rant. It would harm our argument if we were out there lobbying in California. And Prop 19 failed, by the way. Okay. Here's another email. As for abolishing free education, which I said in several rants, count me in. Will we get a reduction in taxes, or will they keep the money and do something else with it? You know the answer. Now, he knows that the reason why I'm throwing out abolish free education is so that we get to the heart of the problem. We're not going to abolish free education. It's not going to go away. Okay? So he's kind of missing the point. Government subsidy or penalty of anything ultimately fails. See real estate subsidized bubble through taxes and government finance. He's right there. We shouldn't have had the mortgage interest deduction. We shouldn't have changed the capital gains taxes for sale of homes. Or see U.S. Postal Service, which lost $3.5 billion last quarter, or FDIC, or Amtrak, or pick your subject. And I'll tell you this, having watched the World Series, watching the U.S. Postal Service commercials compete against UPS and FedEx, our tax dollars, why are we financing the Postal Service? I do not understand. I mean, I understand it's to keep these people employed. Okay. What do we do with these unemployed postal workers? But it's not to provide cheap letters. People use electronic transfers now. That's just how it goes. Or you can go to the HEB and pay your bills. All right. But when government provides incentive or disincentive to do anything, it distorts the free market. See, electric cars is the latest example. Billions being poured into this folly. Now, buddy, there is always an incentive or disincentive set up through the tax code and regulatory codes, okay? So right now we incentivize the oil and gas industry. We incentivize and disincentivize everything. Everything is distorted. Every free market is distorted. So talking about electric cars as the latest example, we wouldn't have had railroads if we had not been able to, through eminent domain, condemn tracks for tracks. That is an incentive to a private industry. And it distorts the free market. Of course it did. They determined that there was a true public use for the use of eminent domain. Okay. And when Ford says they were not bailed out, note their $7 billion loan from the Energy Department and their FDIC guaranteed commercial paper issuance in 2009, without which they were gone. I agree. Drugs are another good one. Legalize and tax, I say, but this is socially unacceptable at the moment. He's right. Imagine what no free public schools would mean, or removing tax breaks for kids, or God forbid, the built-in incentive for welfare mothers to continually procreate. I'm with you, buddy. Now, he commented on the rare earth metals. This is where there was actually recycling going on, and he's got his own little blog here, see www.bulltraps.com, and my comments on that. Critical but misunderstood topic. More to come soon, but recycling is not an efficient way to rapidly increase the supply of the Magic 17, of which 97% of their supply is provided by China. I was really getting more to, in that particular rant, I was talking about my external hard drive and how the real cost of the hard drive is externalized or commonized to our landfills and to us, the taxpayers. My point was that I like recycling because the item goes back to the person that produced it. And we may pay the real cost and the real cost to the commons. That was my point. Okay, going back to this thing, this is a big number of any commodity, but especially these due to their strategic value in a time of war. Smart move on China's part here. Keep ranting. Okay, from the same guy. A few thoughts to ponder. Fixing the system is tough when at the moment should all be about the boat not sinking, which it is. This is a couple of months ago. The coming economic debacle will enable folks to focus on some of your issues out of necessity, I hope. But like much of the crap coming out of D.C., it will be driven by special interests and not thought out. Rushed and wrong. Financial regulation reform without Fannie Mae, FHLMC, FHA, and the ratings agencies, give me a break. Number two. As for voting all of the incompetents out and starting with new incompetents, great idea, count me in. But as I said in my rant at bulltraps.com, updated tonight, you will note that voters vote in their self-interest. True. Not for what is right or wrong. See, Ted Kennedy is example number one. He brought home the pork, so he gets to stay. The people are the problem, not just the politicians. Entitlement is a tough mentality to break. It does not happen fast. It takes crisis, reality, and generations. Excellent comment. I totally agree. As for eminent domain, uncertainty is a bad thing, especially in an economy, and it is worse in a valuable and illiquid asset like real estate. But if you are a real estate owner today, it has some value to be forced to sell. Very good commenting, buddy. And otherwise, keep up the thought-provoking rants. We need them. He's a friend from high school. Here's one on education. Hey, Goldie, very interesting point about teachers' unions. This is where I said that there has to be something broken about teachers' unions because you never hear people complaining that they're being overpaid, yet they negotiate against people that are handing out other people's money, not their own, versus, say, manufacturers of cars and car unions, where it's their own money that they hand out. The low pay of teachers is evidence of the union's ineffectiveness. However, I think the reason teachers can't convince us to pay them more is that people don't think teaching is really a skilled profession. It's babysitting or group parenting. Every parent thinks he could be just as good or better than most teachers. There are a few we encounter who are clearly fantastic, but there's no obvious way to identify them. Test scores are not it, and using a convenient measure that's flawed is worse than no measure at all. It perpetuates mediocrity and rewards the wrong things. In higher education, we are ranked by our peers and by our students. Both of these count heavily in salary and promotion decisions. I would suggest that K through 12 education should follow that model with the addition of parent ratings. Maybe if students were asked at the end of the year, did you learn much in this class? Was your teacher fair to all students? Was your teacher prepared for class? And so on. The students would think a little more about whether their time is just being wasted. My premise is that students would answer thoughtfully and honestly, not just out of spite or whimsy. My experience with kids supports my premise. Rant on, brother. Scooter. I received an email from a friend today regarding Proposition 19 in California, weed legalization. Quotes, I admit, I am a bit surprised by the outcome of the marijuana legalization measure in California. I'm also disappointed in all the short-sighted people who may have voted against it, not because they are against it in principle, but because it wasn't good enough, didn't protect small growers, etc. How are we going to get moving on this? Close quotes. What the heck are you talking about, brother? What freaking idiot voted against this legalization measure because it wasn't good enough? Seriously, that's the stupidest thing that they could have done. And I haven't heard any of that, but I didn't hear any of that. I mean, I could understand that it was upper middle class whites, older, richer people that just don't like marijuana because it's illegal, and so we shouldn't legalize it because it's illegal. Who the heck knows what reasoning came out of California? They reelected Barbara Boxer, and I'll tell you this, O'Reilly is on a rampage against her. I don't know why. I don't know why. I'm watching it, though. But seriously, I can't believe it didn't pass. I cannot believe it, because as I said, Fox's message was incoherent. That meant Fox was not against it. How did they know it wasn't going to pass? I mean, I don't think they knew it, but they weren't under pressure to run ads by the DEA, ads by the drug companies, or ads by arms manufacturers. Okay. I have a friend in the Northeast who said that she did not believe that people were dying under our current healthcare system. I said in my healthcare rant that I wished that people that were against Obamacare, and I say this on purpose, I use that message word, I said that people that are against Obamacare, if at least they would admit that more people will die, or people will continue dying that don't have health care, that don't have insurance and can't get insurance and can't get health care. If they would at least admit that, at least they'd be honest. That's basically what I said. They would at least be honest about it. Similarly, the big three questions that I ask Tea Partiers or conservatives is, are you for or against abortion? Are you for or against the death penalty? Are you for or against killing Iraqi babies? If you get inconsistencies, you know what you're dealing with. Probably not somebody that you want to speak to. If they can at least be consistent on those three things, you're okay. So I have said that people that are against a change to health care and pre-existing conditions, as long as you're okay with me dying because I have a spot on my cheek and I can't get health care in order to get chemo to take care of the melanoma, that's okay. Say it. I didn't save up enough money to be able to pay cash for my chemo. Cool. Be consistent, okay? So she said she didn't believe anybody was dying because of the system. She didn't see sicko, I guess. I said to her, wow. you're assuming that even people without health insurance are getting care in the form of chemo. She said she believed they were. Well, in the October 24th, 2010 Austin American-Statesman, which was the pink breast cancer issue, women in Williamson and Travis counties are more likely to be diagnosed with breast cancer than women in smaller Hayes, Bastrop, and Caldwell counties. But women in the two larger counties have a better chance of surviving the disease, state data shows. Experts don't know the reasons behind the seemingly contradictory stew of data, but skimming below the surface provides clues. They see socioeconomic status and gaps in services influencing who lives and who dies. Women in rural counties are more likely to live in poverty, are less likely to have health insurance, and have more problems gaining access to doctors. Those factors can delay a diagnosis until the disease is more advanced, thus reducing survival rates, said Marjorie Galise, a patient navigator with the Breast Cancer Resource Centers of Texas, a Central Texas nonprofit founded by breast cancer survivors. They have data to back it up, contrary to Goldy, who's also known as Mr. Anecdotal. So there's some facts for you, my friend from the Northeast, my smart friend from the Northeast, my smart female friend from the Northeast. I received an email from the Texas ACLU this past week, and I had been doing a little bit of ranting about the Rutgers guy that jumped off the bridge, the George Washington Bridge, and then we were all talking about these anti-bullying laws, and by the way, that's when I kind of devolved into hate crimes, which I dislike. I hate hate crimes. All right. Hey, my Tea Party friends, contrary to what you have heard only on Fox with Rush and with Glenn Beck, the ACLU is a friend of yours. Even my Tea Party friend didn't even have any idea what the ACLU does, okay? I was a bit worried that the ACLU would be supporting new anti-bullying laws. Similar to hate crimes, these anti-bullying laws add penalties to laws already on the books if you can prove an additional intent, or scienter, as it's called in the law, because they were gay, because they were black, because they were a Jew. I've always said that I dislike these hate crimes, as you have to prove another level of intent on top of proving the intent to commit the crime. Intentional killing becomes murder. Intentional killing as a hate crime would be murder as a hate crime. I don't get it. I mean, you're going to go to jail. I don't get it. It's hard enough to determine the intent of a party that they intended to kill the person. They bought the gun. They talked about, I'm going to kill you. There's something on a recording. I'm going to kill you if I see you next time. Anyway, the ACLU is against new anti-bullying or hate crime laws in Texas. We already have them. Thank you, ACLU. Thank you. I at least don't have to argue with these guys about a bad decision on your part on that. Okay. On this past Saturday night at that same Halloween party, a friend from North Texas who just had her second child brought up the fact that it would not matter if we do away with me paying for 2 of your children's schooling. It would not matter if we did away with the tax code support for you having children. It would not matter if we did away with student loans. People would still have children. She's right, but she's missing my point. We should do away with that stuff. And then when we have to make the hard decisions about what government services to continue, and when student loans do go away, and we further cut funding for public schools, these same people who understood they weren't going to get this stuff just can't complain that they have no money and a crappy life. That's my point. Don't have kids and then have no money and complain to me about it. Okay? Because you're not getting whatever the heck you thought you were supposed to get. The status quo. No one's entitled to the status quo. No one. Not me, not you, not anyone. You have a child, you better assume you're going to have to do it. Take care of that child. A friend of mine in Connecticut said that I had not had children for the good of society, which is completely untrue. He also said that I'm telling people not to have children for the good of society. Both statements are completely false. I did not have children out of selfishness. I like my life and I like my leisure and I like the creature comforts that I have. I like doing this rant. Think I can do it with kids running around? As to telling people not to have children, all I said was that if you decide to have children, assume that you will have to house, clothe, educate, and provide health care for them for the rest of their lives, even after you're dead. I said that people that are getting pregnant now cannot complain later that they have a shitty life, or that public education sucks, or that there is not enough food, or that they don't get enough tax breaks, or that there is insufficient health care. If you accept these responsibilities, then have as many children as you want, and shut up. I don't want to hear it. Okay, I tell you what, I would have been a lot more depressed today if I had not been doing this rant since March. And if I did not have all of these great friends, associates, and critics that have given me feedback and input on these issues. Don't give up the fight, because I won't. That's all there is today. I want to thank our sponsors, all of which support this form of conversation, but not necessarily the content. PianoByAngelo.com, Angelo Limbesis, who teaches and plays keyboards all over Austin. ZetaDesign.com for all of your decorative painting needs. AustinAreaPlumbing.com for all of your Austin plumbing problems. TicoAdventureLodge.com, a small hotel in Samara, Costa Rica. CNCSurfSamara.webs.com, great surf school in Samara. La Vela Latina, a great sunset restaurant in Samara. Ambar Tequila at www.santosspirits.com, an extremely smooth tequila. And another cool little hotel in Samara, and I'm going to pronounce it the way Americans pronounce it so that you can actually write it down. www.villablancasamara.com. I know you say villa in Espanol, but it's villa. www.villa Blanca, B-L-A-N-C-A, Samara.com. Thanks and God bless.